Second MA English, coordinator and founder of this evening. I render my hearty welcome to you all for this enthusiastic evening. Research is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought, Albert said. Hence, we are here to share what is to be treasured. We begin the function with Tamil Thai Valtu.
Yes, Gayatri, continue.
Once again, a pleasant evening to everyone. The symbol of synergy with an intense energy, you, the human dynamo, the power makes people happy. Now I request our beloved Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan, Head of Department of English, to give welcome address.
Vanakkam and good evening. Welcome to the valedictory session of In Tandem. And by valedictory, it doesn't mean grand finale, but to me, it's more like a birthday party, a time for celebration, a time for Thanksgiving, for a year that has gone by, and looking forward to the year to come. So, on this note, I welcome you all to In Tandem, which is a work in progress. Uh, a warm welcome to our principal, madam. Uh, she is, as I have said on several occasions, a dynamic, result oriented person, a professor of physics who has more to her uh, outlook than material science. And she is definitely a person with a very soulful person. Madam writes poetry in Tamil, and she does have a feel for literature. That is how we are able to connect with Madam, and she is encouraged in tandem to the core right from the start. So this program was flagged off by our principal. I welcome with all my heart the warm and loving presence of our beloved principal, Dr. B. Uma Maheswari. I thank the speakers of the day for giving their consent to be with us. It is a very small and humble platform, but I appreciate the fact that people of your standing have made time to be with us, and I welcome each and every one of you. I have so much respect for Professor Bernard Disami. As a young lecturer, way back in 2000, I heard him at Loyola College at the Voices of the Voiceless conference, and I was overjoyed when my friend Dr. Geetha told me that she could bring him over as resource person for us today. So, Professor Bernard Disami, I still remember all that you shared on that occasion about Ranajit Guha and the Subaltern Studies Project and It was such a good introduction to subaltern studies that you gave, and that was the beginning of my learning, may I acknowledge. So welcome, dear sir,
Thank
to
you.
our this valedictory session, and your presence here is a big encouragement to us. I thank Mr. Michael Valan, Head of Field Office, UNHCR, for joining us this evening. I understand that you're a very busy person. Dr. Geetha has told me a lot about the work that you are doing. And thank you for involving our research scholars in your project with the Ukraine. Welcome, sir. I do welcome my dear friend and long-standing acquaintance, Dr. Geetha. So we were a research fraternity at one point of time. Geetha and all of us belong to a similar research club at the University of Madras. So the whole idea of a research club came when we were research scholars. And I do remember Dr. Srilata, Geetha, all of us sitting in a circle and sharing. Where before we went for a conference, we would share our papers and receive feedback from friends at the research club. So I welcome Dr. Geetha, Associate Professor of English, DG Vaishnav College, and Controller of Exams at the same institution. And happy to say that she has been an inspiration in many ways, especially through her high achievement as a Fulbright scholar. She won the Fulbright Fellowship at a time when it was very competitive. Now you have the Fulbright Nehru Fellowship, where you have more fellowships. But when Geetha won then the Fulbright, there were very few fellowships being awarded to India, and that was the time when she secured this prestigious award. So welcome, Dr. Geetha.
Thank you, Preeti.
I do welcome friends and kindred spirits without whom I wouldn't be where I am today. Dr. Srilata, retired head and associate professor of English, Chalamal College, and my dear friend, Dr. Samuel Rufus. Welcome, Rufus, sir. I must tell you about Dr. Rufus's contribution to keeping up the spirit of research. One of the things that I often tell Dr. Rufus that he belongs to the ministry of utmost encouragement. And this is what he has been doing for us. He's the patron not only of In Tandem Research Club, but also of the book club, the Reader's Planet, that we have for the undergraduate students. Dr. Rufus, thank you for making time to be with us here today. Welcome, sir. And a friend that I have made through contacts through the In Tandem, and I was introduced to Dr. Debashree, Associate Professor of Comparative Literature and Deputy Coordinator, Center for Canadian Studies, Jadavpur University. Thank you, Dr. Debashree, for joining us, and welcome. Two of my friends who belong to the same research club that I was in as a student, I need to acknowledge them. They said that they would join me, and they are Dr. Padma of Stella Maris and Dr. Aparna Srinivas. So Dr. Padma and Aparna, you can call them the founding resource persons of In Tandem. So before we actually started now in 2021, we had, it was a nascent club in 2018. And we did have a couple of meetings. And the first meeting I remember was by Dr. Aparna, where she presented on Booker Prize novels. So I must place on record Aparna's contribution since then to the In Tandem Club, and Dr. Padma of Stella Maris. And the thing about all these associations and contacts is they have kept it going by sending us research scholars as presenters, arranging for chairpersons. So I'm very happy to and humbled on this occasion to acknowledge all the support that I've received. To my research scholars, Nancy, who is the president of In Tandem, a warm welcome. And to the secretary of the club, Narmada. you need people to work behind the scenes, make the invites, um, the, create the links, uh, then make the certificates for the presenters after every program. And there's a lot of hard work. So all this hard work is done by my research scholars, Nancy and Narmada. Welcome, Nancy. Welcome, Narmada. And my PG students who, like Gayatri, has volunteered today to compare the program. Each of them comes forward to compare every edition of In Tandem. Welcome to each and every one of the PG scholars and research scholars of the department. I welcome all my colleagues from the Department of English. You have been with me, and our work together can be summed up in just one word, which our principal madam might appreciate: synergy. So when we work together, that's the outcome, synergy. So my colleagues have been on In Tandem as chairpersons, as presenters, and so we have completed successfully 21 editions of In Tandem, thanks to the support of my colleagues. So on this happy note, I welcome each and every one of you to the valedictory session of In Tandem, and I request you to stay with us today and through the journey ahead. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Inside you, there is a passion as deep as ocean. The innovation you wear made us walking on air. I would like to thank our principal ma'am, Dr. Uma Mageshwari, a dynamic leader and a good human being, for her valuable presence in this session. She is doing many innovative things for the welfare of the students. Now I request our principal to deliver the presidential address.
Madam? Ma'am, you have to unmute, madam.
Madam, I am trying to speak. Am I audible?
Yes, 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 madam, you are audible.
Okay. Shall I start, madam?
Yes, madam, you can start.
Okay. So, good evening to all the wonderful people present on this online venue today. And it gives me immense pleasure to give the presidential address in the valedictory session of the research club of In Tandem, the research club started by the Department of English. Originally, it was started in the year 2018 and it was revived on 14th July 2021, which is the founding day of our prestigious institution. The taglines for most of the brochures for any event in our college life was education at QMC, the privilege of lifetime. Privileging the underprivileged is what we do as in government college. I am very happy to share that we are having in our esteemed institution 18 PG departments, of which 12 are research departments. As you all know that As Madam Preeti said about me, being as a physics faculty, at this juncture, I would like to share that in our college we have the instrumentation laboratory sponsored by DST, and we have a separate instrumentation lab for bioinformatics. And many of our faculty have got central government funding from UGC and state government funding from Tamil Nadu State Council for Higher Education for minor research and major research projects. While our achievements in the research are there to showcase that we at our college endeavored to create a research climate through Research Club. And I am very happy to share that the Department of English has consistently conducted club activities on a fortnightly basis for in tandem. Every session has proved to be enriching, especially for the PG students, MPhil and PhD research scholars who are full-time members of the club, all the club activities. The schedule of the meeting was planned meticulously, and every
I think we have lost her on the call. Principal Madam says she had a power failure at her end, so she's asked us to continue. Gayatri, we can continue.
Okay, ma'am. We are thankful to Dr. Samuel Rufus sir and Dr. Srilata ma'am. In spite of their busy schedule, they contribute their time and wisdom to enlighten students. Now I request Dr. Samuel Rufus, Assistant Professor of English, Madras Christian College, to give felicitation address, followed by Dr. R. Srilata Sugandhan ma'am, retired professor and head of English, Chalamal College.
And followed by Dr. Debashree.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been a very wonderful journey traveling with you all throughout these years, seeing in tandem grow to the heights that it has been today. I would say with all sincerity that it's a pioneering initiative in an arts and science college, especially when it comes from Queen Mary's College, because we here also, we don't have such a wonderful, a beautiful conclave of excellence. This morning I was telling ma'am that, frontiers of knowledge we have cruised through all these years. Every in tandem conclave, symposium used to enlighten us, enrich us, engage us. We used to have a lot of discussions, and they made us, day by day, in every way, we are getting better and better. So I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Dr. Preeti Srinivasan and her vibrant team on this occasion. And I also wish that in tandem grows in leaps and bounds in the years to come. Thank you so much.
Yes. Shall I?
Yes, Srila.
Yes. I'm proud and happy to be associated with In Tandem from its inaugural symposium on the theme of autobiography. That was on the 14th of July 2021. Since then, every fortnight, without any hitch, Queen Mary's College's PG Research Department has conducted research symposiums on almost all literature related themes, inviting expert faculty to chair sessions from various departments across India. And also, because it's online now, from other countries as well. We had somebody from Australia at some point. Yeah, I don't remember which one of them. Today, we are attending its validatory symposium. And I welcome all the, today's resource people. I don't know whether they are all paper presenters, but I think all of them look
Singapore,
like
Australia,
experts.
Singapore.
Yes, and I'm happy to say that I enjoyed and benefited from the learning and research experience as much as any other student here. The club, without compromising on quality, has given space for students from various colleges in India to present their research papers. Students of Queen Mary's College have been the greatest beneficiaries because they've been given opportunity to be presenters and participants and share the learning and research experience, which is so very essential in any academic institution, but is sadly lacking in many. The credit for all this, I think, should be shared by Dr. Uma Maheshwari, principal of the college, who has been wholeheartedly encouraging the research initiative and supporting the Department of English QMC, headed by the very enterprising and research oriented Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan and her very supportive staff members. Together, they have proved that with cooperation and support, nothing is impossible. Because everybody talks that government colleges don't, don't have the ability to do all of these things. The staff, have been delegating the duties to their research scholars whose presence is everywhere, from the presentation of papers to organizing the symposium and with their staff and being active participants. I wish the department all success and hope it will continue to uphold this research tradition as it has held on to many other academic values and methods in the past. Thank you all.
Dr. Debashree.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Uh, the pandemic hasn't really given us too many things to be happy about, but I think the association that Professor Srinivasan was talking about that began in October last year with when we got connected and I was invited to speak is one of the happiest occasions that I can think of. Um, I think people before me have already spoken, but I think it's very, very difficult to have something so consistently and to actually have the involvement of so many scholars together. And I think what some of the things that Professor Srinivasan mentioned, which is about her research days, and I think this is also why In Tandem is so attractive for me because it reminds me of our associations as research scholars, and then you grow up and you have other connections. And I'm hoping that students that I'm acquainted with through my teaching experience are also connected to students over here, and that kind of builds up into a larger picture later on. And I think that's very, very important. I'm very grateful about the interdisciplinary support that In Tandem receives. Principal Marin has been, I understand, very supportive, and I also think there's also the inter-college collaboration that is happening within Tandem, and of course, uh, uh, the college itself. And I am very, very grateful that this is possible. I'm hoping that we can have something in person at some point, but I think at this point, this is what is probably the best. So, and it's amazing to have scholars. I've actually seen people working and being very on time with certificates or letters or connections, and I think I am used to that kind of thing with the student fraternity at Jadavpur, but it's also very heartening to see it in another college. So it kind of feels good that there may be possibilities of connections later on, not just with faculty, because that is easier, but I think with students, that's more important and very crucial as well. So thank you for having me here, and it's a privilege to be with so many people. And I'm very grateful to Professor Srinivasan and In Tandem for this initiative and the Department of English. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to the valedictory session, but I'm also hoping that it becomes kind of a precursor for the other sessions to come in the next semester. And I understand that people are very active because you hardly have 1.5 months and then you have the next session. So thank you very much. With you.
Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invite, and we are so privileged to have you, ma'am. Now I request Narmada ma'am, PhD scholar, Secretary of In Tandem, to give her valuable feedback, followed by Angeline Jennifer of 2nd MA English.
A very good evening to all the dignitaries, members of In Tandem Research Club, faculty, presenters of the day, scholars and students. It's a very special moment for me to share experience that In Tandem Research Club offered me. I would like to thank Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan ma'am, our HOD, and the Faculty of English Department for taking this great initiative to enrich the minds of the students with the knowledge on varied subjects, on varied topics. I would also like to thank our patron, Dr. Samuel Rufus sir, for his contribution and dedication. As the saying goes, you're truly home only when you find your tribe. I felt that this research club connected me with my tribe, and this is a second home for one's professional life. When I was a student and now being a research student, I always wanted to learn as much as possible from my teachers and other experts outside the academic circle. And this one is a great platform for me to achieve it. And these research um, meetings have really served that purpose. All the research topics were contemporary, and the chairpersons led it to a well facilitated discussion and provided us with many research insights into the topic. The most thing I really enjoyed the most is the presentations from outside the academic circle and from other departments, especially topics like medicine and literature, where Dr. Uma Maheshwari ma'am's presentation on health science and Vedic literature was really intriguing and indulging. Similarly, topics like translation studies, mythology, historical geography, Adivasi experience, to name a few, have really piqued my interest. Of course, all the topics are interesting and very insightful. One person we are most indebted to is Dr. Srilata ma'am, who has been present for all the research meetings, shared her views, and contributed much for shaping the discussions with our knowledge. She'll be the first one to be admitted into the Google Meet. Such is her dedication, and I really thank you, ma'am, for that. And I do want to mention about the topic Black Lives Matter. The presentations by our guest lecturers of English Department, Queen Mary's College, and performance of the PG students on George Floyd and his final moments was really overwhelming. And it was an opportunity for me to learn more about the racist ideology and its reflection on poetry and about the sufferings of the oppressed section. And all these research meetings introduced me to new literature and new reference books and shaped my research interest in a very great way. So I would like to thank everyone who directly and indirectly contributed to this research club from the bottom of my heart. And I thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity.
Good evening. This standing session has been a great opportunity for the students to enlighten their knowledge and broaden the roads of their research with their unique theme in every session. It has opened great ideas for future researchers and given materials for great researchers. My personal favorites in these sessions were literature, medicine, and well-being, where Dr. Denisa Davidson, a consultant, talked about how storytelling is a great healing method, and followed by Dr. HOD of Sanskrit department, talked about how Vedic medicines have influence in our Indian tradition, and various other topics such as translation studies, how translation has taken place has helped our research development. Thank all the presenters and all the faculty for arranging this type of educational sessions for us. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you for your valuable feedback. Now I request Nancy, research scholar and president of In Tandem, to read the annual report.
Good evening. I'm Nancy, research scholar and president of In Tandem Research Club. It gives me immense pleasure to be a part of this club. Now I'd like to give a give the club report. 1 second, I'll share my screen. The inaugural meet of the club on 14th July was flagged off by the principal of the college, Dr. B. Uma Maheshwari. Miss Nancy presented a paper on autobiography, writing self, community, and nation. The chairperson for the symposium was Dr. Sridevi, Principal, CTTE College, Chennai. The next fortnight symposium was held on 29th June 2021. The theme of Adivasi writing was explored by the faculty members of Queen Maris College. Dr. R. Srilata, Associate Professor and Head, Department of English, Chellamal College, Patron of In Tandem, chaired the session. On 13th August 2021, the club had a lively session of performance poetry as a cultural marker. Students from MCC performed their poems. The chairperson, Ms. Sayuja, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Stella Maris College, brought the forum a knowledge of performance poetry. A panel discussion on comparative literature was held on 28 August 2021. 3 faculty members participated with their enriching experiences. Dr. Leonard Dickens, Assistant Professor in Cultural Studies, Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Calcutta, chaired the session. The theme for 10 September 2021 was Black Lives Matters. The session was vibrant and we had a performance by the Queen's Theatre. 3 papers were also presented on the occasion with Professor David Abraham Albert, Assistant Professor, Madras Christian College as a chairperson. On 24th September 2021, we had a special session on disability studies. Morning, we had an offline event felicitation for Dr. K.M. Kanti, Associate Professor, retired Associate Professor, Queen Mary's College, Smita, activist for rights of disabilities, Dr. Shivaraman, Associate Professor, Presidency College, and Dr. Jayashree, Librarian of QMC. Evening, we had a regular in tandem session where Abhisha Magdalene, research scholar, presented a paper, and Dr. J.S. Jahangir, Assistant Professor and Head, Department of English, Iqbal College, Thiruvananthapuram, chaired the session. On 8th October 2021, panel discussion on eco-criticism was chaired by a patron, Dr. R. Srilata ma'am, and the three paper presenters gave their insight on eco-criticism. 22nd October 2021, with exile, writers in political exile as theme, two presenters presented their unique views on exile, and Dr. Archana, Associate Professor and Head, Department of English, Anna Adich College for Women, chaired the session. On 19th November 2021, the session on genocide was chaired by Dr. Laura, Associate Professor, Department of English, Bharatidasan University, Tiruchirappalli, with the two paper presenters. On 3rd December 2021, the theme was gay and lesbian. On 3rd December 2021, we had a theme of gay and lesbian studies. Ms. G. Madangi, Assistant Professor of English, A.M. Jain College, chaired the session, and we had a guest speaker, Mr. Alagu Jagan, he, her person, and we had three paper presentation. 17 December 2021, we had a symposium on historical geography. We had three paper presentation with Dr. Aparna Srinivas, Director, Emerald Dove Learning, as a chairperson. 12th online session of In Tandem was on 7th Jan 2022 with the theme Indian Diaspora. Dr. Uma Jayaraman, academic writing, CELC, National University of Singapore, chaired the session with three paper presenters. Ms. Sangeeta, Director, The Queen's Theatre, Queen Mary's College, Chennai, read the excerpt from Niraj Chaudhary's The Eternal Silence of This Crowd. In Tandem had a theme of literature, medicine, and well-being on 21st January 2022. Dr. Samuel Rufus, Assistant Professor of English and Associate Dean of Students, Madras Christian College, Chennai, chaired the session, and we had four paper presentations on literature, medicine, and well-being. On 4th February 2022, the theme on multiculturalism was explored with Dr. Preeti Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, St. Teresa College, Ernakulam. Three presenters present their papers. We also had a dramatization of Neil Wong's When I Was Growing Up by the faculty members of the Department of English. The symposium theme mythology. The symposium themed mythology had two sessions. On 18th February 2022, we had a symposium on Mythology 1, Oral Tradition, three different papers on Mythophilia, Old Naga Society, Legend of Nanda was presented by the presenters. The chairperson was Dr. Melvin, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Bishop Heber College. Mythology 2, Modern Literature based on Mythology was on 4th March 2022. Dr. V. Shivaraman, Associate Professor of English, Presidency College, chaired the session, and three presenters presented the papers. Memory Studies was the theme on 18th March 2022. Mrs. Deepa Priyadarshini, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Madras Christian College, chaired the session with three paper presenters. 1st April 2022, a symposium theme was Prison Narratives. Dr. Debashree, Associate Professor, Comparative Literature and Deputy Coordinator, Center for Canadian Studies, Jadavpur University, Kolkata, chaired the session. The session had a quiz in famous prisoners anchored by Mr. Ajay Ramakrishna, PhD scholar. For 22nd April 2022, the assigned theme was Translation Studies. Dr. Dominic Xavier, Associate Professor of English, retired American College, Madurai, chaired the session, and we had three different papers on Tago's translation, mission translation, and challenges involved in translation. On 20th, on our 20th online session was on travel writing. Dr. Saranya, Assistant Professor of English, Ethraj College, chaired the session, and a patron, Dr. Srilata ma'am, presented a paper. Today is a 21st fortnight symposium, and this is also our valedictory session. With this, I would like to conclude this academic year report. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Today we are going to imbibe the ideologies of the unique theme refugees and the Litscape in our in tandem. Refugee stories can be a useful tool in educating and informing the public about the states of the refugees crisis. As these stories foster empathy, it is likely that communities will remember refugees and seek to help and provide them with relief and safety. Our chairperson for this evening symposium is Dr. Debashree Dattaray, Associate Professor, Comparative Literature and Deputy Coordinator, Center for Canadian Studies, Jadavpur University, Kolkata. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for accepting our invite, and we are so privileged to have you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Gayatri. It's an honor to be here. So I would begin the sessions right away. Before that, because I would just like to know how much time for each speaker the organizers could please inform me.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right.
Yes.
So I'll send just a reminder 14 minutes so that we're on time for everyone. And it's a privilege to be here, and I understand that we're talking about refugee and the refugee crisis and literature, and I think this is a very important moment to be there, because how do we remember and represent our migration experiences, what's involved in this process, and most importantly, how does history remember these events? What would help migrants and societies to adapt? What is the significance of this refugee crisis in terms of policy decisions, individual abilities to rebuild identities, communities, and memories in the context of our daily lives? I mean, this is integral to the human experience, I think, the whole idea of migration, adaptation, and memory. And refugee studies brings us to this crossroad of multiple representations, be it psychological, social, historical, cultural, philosophical, organizational, political, economical, and others. And I think the paper presenters over here would provide us a very good idea about what it means to talk about refugee studies today, which, as we speak right now, is constantly changing. The demographics are changing, the data is changing, and everything else is changing. It's a privilege to welcome our first speaker of the session, Professor Farah, who's Director, Loyola Institute of Social Science Training and Research, Loyola College, Chennai. It's a privilege to have you here, sir, today. Thank you very much for being with us, and over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. I hope I am audible and visible.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I will also add my voice in congratulating in tandem. You have conducted more than 20 sessions, and looking at the type of meetings you have conducted, very impressive, and I'm sure that the research scholars would look forward for such meetings. because it is in such meetings they also get insights and to do the research more effectively, more the qualitative research. For a qualitative research, such meetings of research scholars are important. I congratulate, and particularly I congratulate Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan for providing such a dynamic leadership in getting the scholars together and scholars together for such meetings. Friends, I'm a historian by training, so I would like to speak to you, from my perspective about the refugees. Maybe towards the end, I will share with you 10, 12 slides. We do come out with, from my research center, we do come out with monthly newsletter, earlier called as RAP, now we call it as FAR, F-A-R, Freedom and Refugees. And every month we try to capture the novels or the, documentaries, mostly the writings by the Sri Lankan Tamils about, their own condition in the last 30 years. The diaspora Sri Lankans have written, and Sri Lankan Tamils have written. That I will share with you towards the end. Maybe that will give you an idea about, the type of literature the refugees are producing today when we look at the refugee crises or refugee issues. First of all, I wanted to tell you that India is one country which has received refugees over a period of time. You can go back to the earliest times when the Parsis entered. We said welcome, and then India said welcome in Gujarat, and then they have settled. You know very well today that the Parsi community, they had come from the Iran side, and there was a religious persecution. They had come, and India welcomed them, and the way in which they have grown in India today is tremendous. And this community has become part and parcel of our tradition, our culture, our history, and our history. So that's about India, and maybe in the recent times, if you look at the refugees, we started our journey in 1947 when the country was partitioned with the partition refugees, and they had come in large number, and people were settling down, and the government of India was able to provide all kinds of help, including job opportunities in the public sector undertakings, housing, so on and so forth. By 1959, there was the Chinese had they had occupied Tibet, and Dalai Lama had come here, and he was knocking at the doors of India, and Jawaharlal Nehru said, welcome, and come and settle. He said that, Dalai Lama said that we would like to come and then give us asylum. Jawaharlal Nehru was so generous in granting them asylum, and that has become one of the reasons for the war, the 1962 war, in which we were India. We were defeated in the 1962 war with China. After that, you will find in 1979 when the Russians invaded Afghanistan, most of the Afghans went to Pakistan, and some too had come to India. And even now we have the Afghan refugees in Delhi, and there was a military coup in Burma, Myanmar in 88. And after that, the Myanmaris went to different places. They had come to the northeast of India and to the Delhi, Chin refugees in Delhi. And from the Chakmas from Darjeeling Hill Tract, they had come, and then they settled in Tripura, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh. And in one of the cases, the Supreme Court of India said that this is the Chakmas case in which the Supreme Court of India said that forcible repatriation is not acceptable. The state cannot forcibly repatriate them. You cannot forcibly make them to go back. It is the repatriation can only be voluntary. So they stopped the forcible repatriation of the Chakmas. So the courts also played a major role in India. And all of us know that the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees had come from 1983 due to the civil war in Sri Lanka. and they had come by different waves, and there were four major waves through which they had come to Tamil Nadu, and today there are about closer to a lakh 60,000, 59, 60,000 living in 107 refugee camps in Tamil Nadu, and another 25 to 30,000 living outside the camps. Never India said no to any of these refugee groups, who were knocking at our borders seeking asylum in India. Maybe except two occasions. One may be, the Stalin's only daughter, Svetla Lena. She had married an Indian and Kashmiri Pandit, and he died in, Russia. And then she wanted sought asylum in India. She said that I'm not going back to Russia. I would like to remain in India. So all of us can understand, even now in the Ukrainian crisis, we are standing thick and thin with Russia, supporting Russia, and taking a neutral stand whenever the voting comes in United Nations. That time also India was closer to Russia and wanted to support Russia and did not want to antagonize the great leader Stalin. So due to that, India said we cannot give her a political asylum. So she was taken to the Roosevelt House, that is a US embassy in Delhi. And from there, she was taken to Nepal. From Nepal, she was taken to US. And in US, she wrote many books about Russia. No, we know very well that the Americans know how to make money, so they make her to write many books. And then she wrote, and then that was one incident in which India did not give a political asylum. And second time, Nasheed, he was a ruler after 30 years of in Maldives, one of our neighbors. And 30 years, Abdul Gayoom was the ruler. And for the first time, democratically, Nasheed was elected. He studied in Madras University, actually. And then Nasheed, after his term, there was a political rivalry. His opponent wanted to imprison him, and then he was imprisoned. And then Nasheed wanted to take refuge in the Indian embassy. That time, India said, we will not give asylum. And in the recent times, all of us know that the Rohingyas had come in large number. Biggest, largest, group went to Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, and India too received them in Kashmir, in Delhi, in Hyderabad, and in Tamil Nadu, Kelambakam, a small number of about 100 and odd Rohingyas are here. And some of them were forcibly repatriated. That is another occasion in which India did not agree for the refugees' stay in India. So, who is a refugee? The 1951 convention says that a person with a well founded fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and social origin. So, if there is a well founded fear of persecution due to these grounds, which I mentioned, a person can leave and seek asylum. And this is a right that is mentioned in the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In any country, this is a definition that is applicable to everyone all over the world, for all the people who are living in different countries. If there is a well-founded fear of persecution, they can seek asylum in any country. So that's the definition with which India has received so many refugees. And in Tamil Nadu, we have Tamil refugees, living in Tamil Nadu for more than 3 decades, 4 decades. It's going to be 4, because next year, if it is 2023, then 1983, it is going to be 4 decades. I'm also thinking whether the refugee lives and their history, their plight, their hopes, their ambitions, their pains, are they captured through literature? I don't think that this is captured by the students of literature. though we have this work, some of the works I will present to you, and that may give you a picture of how that has been captured by some of the writers. Maybe maybe a kind of introduction to those who are doing research, that they can consider really doing research on refugees. We have now what is called the GCR, Global Compact on Refugees, from 2018. All the countries are members of the Global Compact on Refugees. And one of the provisions of the Global Compact on Refugees, it tells us that uh, the statistics is this: not even 1% of the refugees globally, not even 1% of the refugees are in the higher educational institutions, which means that if you are a refugee, the chances of entering the portals of higher education is completely closed, nil, as far as the refugees are, higher education is concerned for refugees. So the Global Compact on Refugees has, they have a provision which says that the member countries can provide scholarships for the refugee students to pursue education in higher education institutions. Is number one, creating scholarships. Number two, courses relating to refugees can be offered. So literature is one department where you can initiate, introducing courses on refugees, on the writings of the refugees in different countries or particular refugee groups. In our context, maybe Sri Lankan Tamil refugees and other refugees who are living in India. And also they are asking research to be also undertaken on refugees. These are the areas where very little is done, and about knowing very little is available and very little is done. So GCR, the Global Compact on Refugees, is encouraging the educational institutions, higher education institutions, to take up research, creating scholarships, and also undertaking research on refugees. Maybe now I will present the slides, about 9-10 slides. They are self-explanatory, that will give you an idea. Yeah. Is it okay that I make a presentation, sharing the slides
Yes,
with
sir.
you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Hope you are able to see, right?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Very famous. Literature students are familiar with Arvind Adiga, and then Arvind Adiga has written this famous novel Amnesty. It is self-explanatory, you can read. This is about Sri Lankan food. A Tamil and a Sinhalese, they are married, and then how the entire thing is a very, very interesting one about the Sri Lankan the cookbook. More into literature, time will write a song for you, contemporary writing in Tamil from Sri Lanka. Still counting the dead. the 1983 Civil War, and then the effects of the Civil War, the rival groups fighting and eliminating people, one group eliminating other, and that is what we see here. Umat, a novel of community and conflict, translated by Geetha Subramaniam. 3 decades of Sri Lankan civil war through the lives of 3 women. Tawakkul, Yoga, and Devani. Tamil diaspora and a war in Sri Lanka. The theoretical framework that are used in this book, Jacques Ellul's Social Propaganda, French philosopher, and Benedict Anderson's Imagine Community. The boat people, originally this term was used when America invaded Vietnam in the 1960s, early 1960s, and the Vietnamese were known as the boat people in the 1960s, when no country allowed them to land. Hong Kong or Malaysia or Singapore, they were not allowed. There were stories written, that they were in waters for 40 days, 60 days, dying, eating each other. All that has been documented with the boat people. This is the second boat people, namely about the Tamils who went to Vancouver, and then another very interesting book by Sharan Bala. This is about the problem of the Indian, Sri Lankan Tamil immigrants who went to West and then getting married, and then they are in England, Canada, big number in Europe, Switzerland, Norway, in Nordic countries, they are everywhere. And then some of these things have been documented. Ganesh Ananthan. Anil's Ghost is set in Sri Lanka, 2000, through the eyes of Anil Tissera. You can see the whole war being captured. I hope this is okay for you, to give you some, because we have done in our newsletter every month. We were trying to get some books written by an author on refugees. Particularly, this is a newsletter that is devoted for the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees. So we were able to identify some of them and then highlight that. I hope this will give you an idea about how refugees been captured by the writers and authors, and particularly those who are from the literature background, how they have captured and how they have written about the refugees. Maybe I will stop here. If you have questions, I will take. Otherwise, we can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sumi. Shall we take the questions at the end, perhaps, because they would be related? Thank you so much, sir. I think this was phenomenal as an initiation into refugee studies, and I'm hoping, and I'm really inspired by the work being done at your center, and I'm hoping that our students here who are listening will get connected to the center in terms of future projects, because I think it's very intriguing. And that's an enviable book list that you showed us. So thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to invite our next speaker, Mr. Valan, Head of Field Office, UNHCR India. I think all of us realize how demanding that work would be by Mr. Valan, and I'm very, very glad that you found time to be with us today. So thank you so much, sir, and over to you. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, madam, and I am very much pleased and glad to be part of this very important event today. And my special regards to Professor Mary Preeti, Maria Preeti, for inviting me, and also my special regards to Professor Bernardisamy, who also taught me in when I was a student on the importance of research, and also has been one of my mentor so far, and also to a dear colleague, Dr. Geetha, who has been very actively engaged with refugee communities, and also doing a lot of research and contributing with a great heart and with a great special interest for the well-being of the refugees in India. So thank you, and without further ado, I just want to share some of my thoughts on the refugees, and also the work that I do and our organization that I work with, that is the UNHCR, does with the refugees across the world, and also in specific reference to India and Tamil Nadu. So just to say a few as a way of introducing the whole issue of refugees, we know it is about displacement, and of course it's also about the human mobility. So we all know that humanity has been always on the move from different continents, from the different parts of the world to the modern state. That is like when the boundaries were also drawn on between different countries. The people have evolved systems in terms of mainstreaming or in terms of streamlining the mobility of human being. So currently in this world, like in this modern world, we have a lot of people moving across continents, across borders, boundaries of countries. And this is maybe one of the things that is like which is being facilitated, or which is being made as a kind of requirement for development and the evolution of humanity in this world. And with the advancing technology, and with the evolving needs of labor markets, and also with the continued challenges due to wars, shortages, and also human rights violations and climate change. So the issue of refugee is about the last reason why people have to move, that is called the forced displacement, because they are not leaving their country or their habitual place of residence just because they are looking for an advancement in life, but out of sheer necessity of protecting their own life and their own family members. So that is what it is. And of course, Professor Bernardisamy had explained in detail about the definition of a refugee. But of course, beyond the definition, also now we need to look at the requirement of helping and supporting the refugees, and looking into the situation in which they have to be put into a best position where they enjoy the human rights as well as the dignity. So especially just to take look at the situation in Sri Lanka, our neighboring country, since the March, especially when the economic crisis has escalated to different political as well as even a human security crisis sometimes. So this is not covered under the definition of refugees, which is legally accepted, globally accepted. But still, we have to deal with this, encounter this reality where people could not live because of economic situation, and they have to seek asylum elsewhere. So how do we deal with that, and what do we need to do as a fellow human being? This is the primary concern that we all have, and I really congratulate Queen's Mary's College and In Tandem Research Club to choose this very timely theme for this today's discussion, that is refugees and the literary space. And of course, human beings, we all know from the time that we have been in the schools and in the colleges, we have been read about a lot of wars fought against another human being. But what we have been told is it's also for a good reason, or for some reason in terms of safeguarding some human being. But at the end of the day, wars create difficulties for human being, whether they are fighting against or fighting for something. So that is what it is. And of course, when we are looking at it, I'm just referring to the recent conflict that broke in Ukraine, where Russia is waging a war against Ukraine, which has led to 6.5 million of human beings have to leave their country to seek asylum, to seek safety elsewhere. and that also within a period of like 2 months, and which explains the world that we are right now living in, and how and what we are going to do for those people. Are we going to deal with the root causes, or are we going to deal with the consequences, that is the protecting the life of the people who are being displaced? So this is another dilemma or a reflection that we need to have, and I strongly believe those kind of reflection can happen by creating a discourse based on a factual, qualitative and quantitative researches. And of course that researches have to be well written, and it's not only about writing it, but also to enable people to understand it by in a way of good presentation, where I have a great regard and respect and expectation for the students and also the professionals who are involved in different literature related work. And of course, when I need to talk about UNHCR, that is the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and this is a United Nations Refugee Protection Agency which was formed in 1950, and that is after the World War II, with the mandate of dealing with these refugees and solving the issue of refugees within the 2 years. And it was given only a 2 years mandate by the United Nations General Assembly, and in which that is expected that by 1952 this organization will be closed. But even after 70 years now, after its establishment since 1950, we have to deal with the increased number of refugees who have been forced to displace because of the different issues that the world is facing right now. And of course, we have, as a United Nations agency, we are working with the the member states of the United Nations, including Government of India, including different nations. But this particular work that we continue to carry on is only with the two particular mandate. That is, one is to protect the refugees along with the states, and second is to ensure that we solve the issues of refugees. But again, when we are looking back after the 70 years of continuous work with the government, what we have really achieved is, yes, we have certain success to count. But again, the challenges are more and more complicated, and it is evolving on a day-to-day basis. So we had to deal with the war between the countries in 1950s, but then it became to a different wars in Africa, that is between different countries as the countries were evolving as an independent state. And then we had to deal with the different issues, including climate crisis and including economic crisis and including in-country conflicts. So this has led to different kind of dealing with a different group, which had to be, for which we had to evolve a different legal definition of segregating them and calling them as refugees, asylum seekers, and statelessness and internally displaced population. So just to give a kind of an example of what is a refugee is a person who is leaving a country due to a well-founded fear of persecution and seeking an asylum to another country by crossing over a boundary, international border. Whereas an asylum seeker is a person who claims that he has a problem, but that claim is not yet been verified, or he has not yet been, or he or she has not yet been accepted to be a refugee, because the refugee status has to be determined by the country based on their sovereign law. And then the concept of statelessness is the person who has lost his legal right to be a citizen of a particular country, whether he was born and he has been living for several years, but due to different reasons, maybe it was that particular place were acquired, or for different political reasons, the country has declared them as a person of non grata, or not the person of like not a citizen of that particular country. They are called stateless people. So for an example, can we imagine a particular person, a child, which is a stateless, which does not belong to any country legally, can claim for a right to education, can claim for a right to development, can claim for a right to physical safety? That is not possible. So this is a kind of another group that we also deal with. And another group that we always deal with is an internally displaced population, IDPs. And IDPs are the ones who are displaced within the country, who did not choose or did not have an option to cross over into another country because of whatever the challenges or the situation that they are in. So this is the kind of different groups that UNHCR is dealing with, and of course for the work and with the support of different international communities and including common people like all of us, that we are able to progress in our work little by little, step by step, in order to protect and also in order to solve some of the issues of these refugees in 132 countries so far in this world. So by looking at it, what are the fundamental issues or challenges that we have to deal with while we are embarking on the efforts and the initiatives of working in protecting or solving the issues of refugees, is primarily the political reasons. So as much as we want to make the whole community aware, the whole world to be aware and empathize with the refugees, there are different political reasons based on which there has been a lot of issues against, there are a lot of discourses against refugees are being created. Excuse me. So one of the things is, like, people always say that refugees are here for various reasons, which is like finding job or just to kind of lead a very lazy life on our tax money, and they continue to be our burden in another country, and they are here for very much spreading Islamophobia, or probably spreading religion, or they are creating a security issue. They are all terrorists. So these are all some of the negative portrayal of so many refugees issues across the world that we encounter. So what we need to really understand or make the people understand as part of our work is, refugees are the people who have not really left their country and their houses, their luxuries of life, they risking their physical safety just for the sake of like living a luxurious life or a developed life in another country. If their reason or they are the consequences, not just because of their own individual problem, but of a problem of political nature or problem of terrorism. So they are the victims of terrorism and they should not be viewed as terrorists. That is something that we have to continue to communicate in this world and at this point of a time. So that is something which we have to do it, and we continue to do it. And of course, though it may sound very simple, but it is a very difficult work, because we have to work across different fronts, that is including the governance, the administrative structure, the legal systems, the social and economic system, and moreover, the refugees are, when they leave, they are exposed to all vulnerabilities. So the women who have to leave, most cases, they face like a very, very, very difficult situations where, to the extreme, some of the women and girls are exposed to trafficking, sexual harassments, and even they are subjected to rape, and they have to go through a lot of struggle just to safeguard. So the question of human rights, the question of human dignity is something that we have to really take into consideration while dealing with these refugees, and to sensitize all these people, especially the government, the civil societies, and also the NGOs and the private sectors now, because the private sectors also play a very major role, and also the media. So for all this purpose, we need a lot of support from the researchers, the academic institutions, and also with the literary people. So because they are the ones who construct a lot of values by inspiring through their writings. So this is something that we would like to also see it with a lot of interest, that Queen Mary's College is currently taking up this as one of the theme, and I'm sure one of the outcomes that we anticipate to achieve by doing this is at least few researches and few publications are being made by those who are participating in this session today. And also, of course, we continue to say that, like, providing protection to the refugees is not something which is alien to any of the cultures across the world, because we are all the brother keeper and the sisters keeper from the time that the humanity started evolving in this world. And especially that has been very much ingrained in our culture, especially in Tamil Nadu and also especially in India. We always say that Aditi Deva Bhavo. But are we really protecting, or are we really applying that Aditi Deva Bhavo, that is the God is a guest, when we are dealing with the refugees? So maybe we are all living in Chennai. So have you come across, have you taken a step to go and see or go and learn about refugee, to go and meet a refugee, and also to find out what we can do as an individual to contribute for the safety and the protection of that particular individual who has been subjected to a very unfortunate and situation in life. And we always become very overwhelmingly emotional when we look at a child that was reported in 2015 in the media, that is in Turkey. A Syrian child, a toddler, Aylan Kurdi, was washed ashore, and we all felt for it, and the world was in shock. But what had happened? It repeated in 2016 again when the bombing was happening in Syria. We also saw a child, another 5-year-old child, Umran, was given, like we can see that like he was completely on a dust and a blood stains. There was a popular photograph that has been published across. And whenever we see such an emotionally appealing things, we feel for it, but we tend to forget. So can we do something beyond that? Just feeling for that moment, rather than just feeling for the moment, can we do something more about how we can deal with them, how we can support somebody who stays closer to us? So currently there are approximately, the statistics say that there are about 44,000 people flee their homes every day seeking safety. That is, in about 10 years ago, it was only 8,500. So now currently we are dealing with about 84 million refugees across the world. And if we put all this 84 million, they will be the 6th most populated country of the world. But what are we going, and where are we heading towards? So can we change the global picture, or we should be changing the local picture? So this is something that we need to really look at it. And especially in India, we have a lot of refugees, as Professor had already explained. So what we need to do is, we might not be seeing that there's a lot of millions of refugees in India. But when we talk about refugees, we need to just remember that it is not a crisis of numbers, but it is a crisis of solidarity. So that is where we need to really support each other in seeing what we can do. And of course, I need to kind of say how successful some of the narration the literary world has played is in that in 2019 there was a very famous judgment pronounced by the Chennai High Court Madurai bench by Honorable Justice G.R. Swaminathan, who had quoted an article written by one of the refugee author, Mr. Pathinathan, which was published in a literary magazine called Kalachuvadu. And he said, even if one heart is made of stone, it would still melt under the searing heat of reality. That is how he has interpreted the article and quoted it in the official judgment. So we can see the power of literature, how it can really change and influence the mind of even a Supreme High Court judge to kind of write a judgment in favor of refugees. And similarly, we have a lot of good things to understand, to make the community and to make the people understand for the general public, is a lot of publications that is required. But unfortunately, we have about 100,000 Sri Lankan refugees, out of which almost 50% are, that is 50,000 are women who live in Tamil Nadu. But we have no publications as of now, which is which are very well researched to refer and to make policies on the reducing the vulnerabilities of women and girls in the camps. So this is a kind of a situation. These refugees have been living for 38 years. So what we have really done. So what I am trying to say is, yes, like Professor Bernardisamy, Professor Surya Narayanan, and Dr. Geetha, and there are few professors, like 4 or 5 professors to my knowledge, who have continued to work on these refugees. But to the degree of work that is required, this is not the sufficient number. And we need to have more people to come forward to commission, to conduct, to support in research activities, and also primarily to come up with publications. And moreover, this publication should also be engaging to engage the refugees themselves. And they have been here in India, especially the Sri Lankan refugees, for 3 decades. But how many of them have been able to come to a higher education level, or to conduct a research degree, or to have a research degree in literature or any other social science? It's very handful of people. So, as a community, as a responsible citizen, as a responsible academic institution, our role is much larger. And we, as UNHCR, we are always ready to, may not be with a lot of resources, but with whatever the small resources that we have, we would be very much willing to come forward to join hands, and also to continue to help the refugees to lead a very dignified and a safe life, where the whole global community is with them, and also to support them. So I conclude by thanking again, once again, for this wonderful session. And we look forward to working with you all. And we are available. You may get our contacts from the internet, and we can take up any other collaborative efforts in the coming days. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Valan. I think this is very useful for all students because it gives us an idea of empirical research and what it means to work in the field. Thank you for broadening our disciplinary perspectives. Thank you very much indeed. We move on to our next speaker, Dr. Geetha, who is Associate Professor of English and Continuous Examinations, UG Vaishnav College. It's a privilege to have you with us, ma'am. So over to you, Dr. Geetha. Thank you.
Good evening, all. And first of all, I have to thank and congratulate Dr. Maria Preeti, like as Mr. Valan said, for choosing a topical theme and its relevance, of which Mr. Valan and Dr. Bernardi Sami just spoke about. I'm very honored to share space with Dr. Bernardi Sami and Mr. Michael Valan, who are fully involved in refugee work and into advocacy work. And I know Mr. Valan's hectically crazy schedule, but the minute I texted both of them, within a microsecond, both of them were like thrilled and overjoyed to accept this invitation. And Mr. Valan, ever since he took over as repatriation officer in UNHCR Chennai office, has always been wanting to connect the academia to the world of refugee issues. So he always, takes the opportunity to conduct programs on World Refugee Day and otherwise. And Dr. Bernardi Sami has been doing work in Sri Lankan refugees and into advocacy research, I think, for decades. And he's also the director of LISSTAR, and they do wonderful projects. So I'm very honored to be with them, and I have very high regard for these two individuals. And over to my topic. The title of my, the talk today is "There is no salt in the tears a refugee sheds." And I'm quoting this from Nuruddin Farah, a politically exiled author from Somalia, the east of Africa. To begin with, when you talk about literature and when you talk about writing from Africa, the question that always comes up is, why do I write? Why does a writer write? And when you talk about the African continent, it becomes very interesting because, again, as Mr. Valan was saying, Africa was, divided and demarcated during the Berlin conference and, into separate states. And they're all new states, and they had their own internal issues. And in the case of Nuruddin Farah, what happened to him was he was, during the military leadership of Siad Barre in Somalia. He actually took over Somalia after a military coup, and gradually he became an autocratic ruler. And during his, entire period from 69 to 91, the 21-year period, which historians, put it in different phases, in 4 phases, and how he was slowly becoming an authoritarian, autocrat, tyrannical, and finally the Somalis were, frustrated and they're divided into groups. Somalis are divided into different clans and sub-clans. I mean, it's mind-boggling to, go into that clanocracy or clan structure. It goes beyond my mind when I talk to Somalis, and Somalis themselves say that they don't understand it. And I know some researchers who have looked at the clan structure and the caste structure in India. They've made some comparative studies. And so they themselves are, they find it very difficult to understand how complex it is. And so all the clans together wanted to, push or throw Siad Barre out of Somalia, and then the whole state collapsed. And in international relations and political science, Somalia is defined as a state collapse or a state failure, so-called, according to the Western labels. Because when you actually look at, literature on collapse, which I have read, a lot of political scientists and international relations experts say that Somalia never had a state. It was a decentralized nomadic community. And after the British and Italians had colonized it, I believe these two territories were both the southern northern regions were merged together and on paper they defined it as a republic, Somali Republic. So they say that there was never a centralized structure there, and the Western state model was imposed on it. And so they say that it was like a sandcastle. So to calling it a state failure or a collapsed state itself is being contested and challenged. And Nuruddin Farah has written, and what happened to Nuruddin Farah? We need to understand how he was exiled. Farah was, understanding what was going on during the Siad Barre regime, and he was studying in the UK, and he started writing about the dictatorial era of in Somalia and the atrocities committed by Siad Barre. He was actually on a visit to Italy, and when he returned from Italy, Siad Barre had this kind of total control over the state. Even the newspaper, one particular national newspaper, was under the control of Siad Barre. I had an opportunity to go through these archives in the Archive Center in the US during my fellowship, and I saw that in the newspapers, that every issue had a photograph of Siad Barre, and the whole thing was Siad Barre centric. All the reporting was Siad Barre centric. So he was censoring all the information that was going out of Somalia. And if there were diplomats or intellectuals who were talking the truth, he would immediately deport them. And he got to know that Farah was writing a novel that was called A Naked Needle. And he, I think, got to hear that Farah was exposing him in that novel. And that is how he threatened Farah. And Farah was actually on a trip to Italy. When he was boarding the return trip from Italy, boarding the plane from Italy back to Mogadishu, his brother called him. He actually called his family, happened to call from the airport, and his brother said, forget Somalia. Just think of it as dead or buried. Do not return because we've been threatened by Siad Barre. If you return, all of us are going to be dead. And so that point, Farah became a political exile, and he could never return to Somalia, but he's gone on and off there for short durations. And so he himself is an exile and has led a nomadic life. And he travels around Europe and US and takes up visiting professorship positions. And, in South Africa, he was there in Cape Town, and he was actually there in the University of Texas at Austin, and in many places. So he teaches creative writing and writes. And all the novels are centered around Somalia because he says, I cannot forget about Somalia. It keeps pole vaulting in my mind. And he also says that Somalia is something to him. It is like a dead baby inside a woman's, stomach. It's in a belly. It's like a dead body. I carry Somalia with me everywhere. And all his novels revolve around Somalia. But this one book that I chose to talk about today is a non-fictional work. It is titled Yesterday, Tomorrow, Voices of the Somali Diaspora. And this is a book that he took many years because he kept traveling to where the Somali communities have actually been displaced. Literally, I think 70 to 80% have been displaced after the civil war in 91 or 92. And till today, there is no solution for Somalia. And it still functions without a government. And so Somalis have had to seek refuge or seek asylum in various countries in Europe, in the Scandinavian countries, in US, in Canada, in Australia. And some have actually moved to India, in Delhi and in Hyderabad. And the numbers in India are very less compared to the numbers outside of India, and also within Africa, particularly in South Africa and in Kenya. Kenya-Somalia history is again it's a history of entangled, it's really entangled so deeply politically. And in Ethiopia, again, they have other issues. So they're there within Africa itself. In South Africa, when they moved to South Africa, South African locals were actually very upset. So they had this, what was called the xenophobia, this fear for foreigners, because they were coming here and they were seizing the opportunities of the local population. And there was a lot of hostility. And there is actually a narrative written by a journalist, and the book is called The Man of Good Hope, which is a story again of a Somali refugee living in literally what you can call a shithole in South African shanties. In fact, when I traveled to South Africa, I took a look at that, those settlements, and it is pathetic, and pathetic is an understatement. And this journalist actually talks with this Somali refugee youth, and he writes his story on his behalf. And I thought of including that book, but I said no, because talking about Somalia means talking about Somalia, about Nuruddin, Farah, and so on and so forth. Okay. Anyway, Farah in this particular book, he tells you that he's offering you all the voices of refugees, and he has traveled across all these countries, interviewed them, and he also tries to give you he defines refugees. And it's a very funny moment when Farah arrives in Kenya in Mombasa port, and an official tells him that he actually doesn't look like a refugee. He says, "You don't look like a refugee." So Farah says, how should a refugee look like? So there are these stereotypes, and Farah actually wanted to tell him, enlighten him that there are educated people and there are high professionals among Somalis, and that and so these kind of stereotypes are goes on in this book. They're challenged in this book. And Farah also gives a lot of definitions. Like he says, to be a refugee is to be suicidal. And when I talk about this particular quote, to be a refugee is to be suicidal, I was thinking of my field trips that I made on and off in Hyderabad. And due to COVID, I couldn't, but I recently went to visit a few of my respondents. And my one point of contact has been a young girl in her 20s. I don't want to reveal the names and their identities for protection and safety's sake. Mr. Valan has always advised me that. And I always take his advice when I'm dealing with them, because it's a very sensitive issue. And a lot of stakeholders are involved. And like he said, it's a very political issue. So I never forget to consult him. So when I went in mid of April, after the pandemic, I think I'm meeting them after 2.5 years, I met 6 respondents. All of them had come from Mogadishu, and they were all crying. And they were all saying that it is better for us to commit suicide. Because India is a non-signatory to the UN, the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. So we do not have any policies like Canada or Australia. Like Canada has an open door policy, and there are steps where the refugee can be integrated into the system. You seek asylum, and then you get the refugee status, and then you gradually get integrated. So you have opportunities for education, for livelihood, and the right to self-respect and dignity. And later you also get naturalized. You can become a citizen of Canada. And Banadisamy sir and Professor Banadisamy and Mr. Valan know about Solomon, a Congolese boy who came to study in Bangalore. And that is when the conflict in Congo happened. And there were 2 ethnic groups. And so overnight, he got a call from home saying that our country is no more. And his parents had to run away. And so there was no country at all there, no state at all there. And so he couldn't go back. And his visa had expired. And so he just became a refugee. So he, had to register with the UNHCR. His friends told him that he had to go he went to the police station. And then he was told to go to contact UNHCR. And then he, got asylum status and then became a refugee. And he was teaching piano classes to kids in Bangalore. And it was funny because he didn't have an Aadhaar card. He could not deposit the money in a bank. So he would always say, I wish I had an Aadhaar card so I could open a bank account. He could never open a bank account because that is the situation of refugees in India. Because we have not signed the UN Charter, they are confined to the protection spaces of what UNHCR gives. So UNHCR becomes their mediator or protector or whatever. So they're not eligible to work. in the formal sector. They do not have any cards. When they apply for asylum status, they have a blue card, a blue color paper, and document. And sadly, today, a refugee is defined or a citizen is defined by a document. And if you read this book, you can see that when Farah has traveled to Switzerland, refugees are given permits, and they have permit F and another permit M. Now, permit F per individual gets more, employability benefits, more benefits, whereas permit M you get lesser benefits, and you will be positioned at the bottommost rung of the, society's ladder. In Kenya, I guess they have a red card. So they, go by these. So documentation again plays a very important role, and that was interesting to me when I read this book. And like I said, I would also delve into my own case studies a bit, so you would understand what it is to be a refugee. Now, most of these women had to run away from Mogadishu or different areas in Somalia, but the fighting was actually in Mogadishu. The respondents whom I met this time, most of them are young women. For some reason, I'm always meeting single women or single moms, and it has been very difficult. Like Valensa said, they are so vulnerable because the local people and sometimes even the FRRO and the immigration officers are unable to understand why they're here. And they also are viewed suspiciously because there is a stereotype that refugees from Africa are doing smuggling or are indulged in illegal activities. So I think there are generalizations that way. And so many times, oftentimes, their houses are raided. And my respondent, I'll call her H. H is in her 20s, early 20s. Her story is like what you literally say, from the frying pan to the fire. And she has actually was studying in her 10th class in Mogadishu. And her parents were very poor. And her father died. He was killed by, again, the opposite clans. And so they killed him. And she, mother, and her siblings, they were living a life of poverty. And H was going to school, and she got a scholarship. It was a free school because they could not afford. And by chance, she went late to school for the first 2 hours. Now, this was the time in the early 2000s when Al-Shabaab, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, had taken control over certain parts of Mogadishu. And so Al-Shabaab was controlling those areas. And in the first 2 hours, they had a class call taken by Al-Shabaab. So it was all about Arabic. It was not about Somalia. So they were indoctrinated into Islam and other things. And they were also, Somali culture was totally subsumed. They had to, read about Arabic culture and Islamization. And so the kids had to go through that for the first 2 hours. And there were soldiers positioned outside, and people from Al-Shabaab positioned outside. And if there was one guy who actually was stalking a young girl, and he actually wanted to marry her. She was very young. And so she went and told her father that he wanted to marry her. And then the father refused, of course. And he was a terrorist. And he shot the father dead the next day. Now, what happened to H was she went to school late. So these Shabab people were following her. They thought that she was deliberately avoiding the Shabab lessons. And so they went home and threatened her and her family. And they threatened her and said that they would kill her. And they were living under this kind of fear. They were always threatening her. And outside also, there was a lot of hostility. And it so happened that H's neighbor was actually in India. Her husband was doing some business in India, and they had 7 children, and the wife was pregnant with the 8th one. And they were in India, and they were looking for a housemaid. And it so happened that they told H's mother that, they wanted a housemaid in India. And so they forged a visa for H, a student visa, and then brought her to India. And she was brought to Hyderabad to work in this household, where she was tortured even much more. And every time her mother called her, they brought her to India under the false promise that she would be put in a college, and they would take care of her, and they would pay her, and they would pay her family also. And H's family did not even have any food to eat. And so that was the promise or the, agreement made. And so when H came to live in Hyderabad, in this Somali household, she had to do the entire, take care of the entire family, this big family of 8, and 7. And this wife was the mother who was pregnant. And she was not given very little food. And when H's mother called her from Somalia, this landlady or her employer would not give her the phone or stand next to her and ask her to put the speaker on. And so tell the people that she was studying and ask her to lie to her own mother and say that she was leading a great life and they were buying her new clothes, which was not the truth. Whenever FRR officials or immigration people came, because the visa expired, of course, the student visa expired after a period, she would ask her to hide under the bed. And that was her story. But finally, one day, I think some relative of her employer happened to come home when there was no one and told her that she had to go to UNHCR and register or else she would be put in jail, that she was illegal. And then she, sought asylum, and now she has a refugee status. And she's very well resourceful. She's picked up English a lot. She cooks very good Indian food, and also, is my point of contact with other respondents. And H also had to undergo a lot of health issues over here in India. Even now, the Al-Shabaab are hounding her. And also the lady, her employer, actually later on moved to Dubai. And from Dubai, she is calling H and threatening her. And the employer's clan people came to Hyderabad for medical treatment. You also need to know here that India is a big hub, a big haven for patients from Africa. They come here for medical treatment and they love Indian doctors. They say we trust them completely. And Apollo and then your global hospitals and a lot of hospitals, especially Global Hospital in near ECR, they have a lot of camps in Somalia, in many places in Somalia. So they go and have set up camps there. And if surgery is required, they ask them to come over here. And then they come with a caretaker and they live here in a service department. They can bring a caretaker, and they also need interpreters to talk to doctors. So at that time, some of the Somali male refugees actually help the doctors because they know Arabic as well. And so that is how some of them earn a livelihood. Because like I said, they cannot work in the formal sector. That is not allowed. And the women actually work as domestic helps to the students who come from Africa to study in, I think Hyderabad and Delhi are big hubs. We used to have a lot of students in Loyola College. Professor Bernardi Sami knows, but I think after COVID, the numbers have dwindled for some reason. So we've had students from Sudan, Somalia, as and when the conflict breaks, they start coming to countries. And since India is much cheaper than the US or UK, because you know how the bureaucratic formalities are, so they choose, some of them also go to China when it comes to medicine, Malaysia. But I think India is much more cheaper. So, if they're not able to afford the West, then they come to India. And in Hyderabad, you have lots of private colleges. You have Muhammad Satak College. So they used to have a lot of students from Muslim, countries of Africa. And there were lots in Vailtech University who are doing pharmaceuticals. That is again a very sought after course, because when they get back to Africa, they get jobs very easily. You have a lot of students from Nigeria as well. But Sudan, South Sudan, when Sudan split into two, we had a lot of students from Sudan and South Sudan as well. So my interest has always been in Africa. So I've been, interacting with these students. And the students and the patients who come to India and the refugees, there is a networking. So these Somali refugee girls stay with these students, and in turn, they are given maybe a little space, in the hall, in the living room. Students share maybe a 2-bedroom flat in Hyderabad, in a not so prosperous area. If you go to Hyderabad, you know how the high-tech city looks like. You have all the offshore companies there. But when you come to the other side of Hyderabad, especially places like Toli Chowki, you can see, how cramped it is. And you have lots and lots and lots of apartments. And particularly in certain areas in Toli Chowki, you have a lot of African communities, a lot of Somali communities coming for various reasons, education or healthcare. And refugees, what they do is when they share space with these students, they're given maybe a small space, maybe near the kitchen, or in the hall. Maybe you can just, put a blanket, a sheet to lie, just sleep, and they cook and clean for the, for the students. And they paid or sometimes not paid. They just get food and accommodation. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, fine. Can I wind up then? Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry. I just, went into that because this is, something that came out of my heart. So the book also talks about similar experiences of refugees in different countries, and the situations are varied because of like Valan sir said, the issue is political. So it depends on how the government and the stakeholders view the refugee thing. In Australia, they have a different policy. In Canada, it's different. And in UK, it's different. And Scandinavian countries, it's different. And so on and so forth. So I just wanted to compare the Indian situation vis-a-vis with other countries. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I thank you. And I'm very, very grateful to Queen Mary's College for not just grateful, but I don't know what else to say. I congratulate the college for having, created this platform and for choosing this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for Geetha. That was indeed very important for us to know. And it is also very important for us to have an idea of the personal lived experiences that we speak about. So thank you. We have, I think, a couple of minutes if people have any questions, any concerns, because these are very important interventions in the PhD studies, and people still have questions or observations that they would ask our student speakers or welcome to ask questions. If there are any questions. Anyone would like to make a comment or perhaps talk about it? I think I'll start with a simple question. One of the questions that I've been thinking about is how has COVID-19, and some of you spoke about it, but how has COVID-19 affected migration and mobility? I mean, how do we talk about it? I mean, how has it changed the migration landscape and produced methodological challenges for researchers? So if anyone of the panelists could speak on that and comment on that, that would be very helpful.
I think Geetha or Valan sir might have to take that question. Bernard sir has left because he has another program.
Right.
Actually, I couldn't hear you, Debashree ma'am, because your voice was a bit muffled.
Oh,
But I
no,
heard.
I asked about how the COVID-19 affects researchers working on this and how does COVID-19 affect migration itself.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell you one or two things, but Valensa is a would give you the UN perspective, and he's a high-ranking official there. But I'll tell you from my own fieldwork, two things that I would like to tell you. In the case of African refugees or Somali refugees, like I said, since there is no scope for them to integrate into Indian mainstream culture and society, I mean, UNHCR is trying to send them to a third country. It's called third country resettlement. And that the percentage is very small. And during the COVID, I think the percentage came down, it became even lesser because because of COVID. So I think US and others had cut down the percentage. So that's one thing. And another thing is for my respondent H, the COVID pandemic became a blessing in disguise because she was actually hounded by the FRRO officials. For some reason, they were tracking her and she was getting all these threat calls. And she had to jump from, literally jump from one Somali house to the other. She was, she was hiding. And I remember another novel of Nuruddin, Farah, Hiding in Plain Sight. So she was literally doing that. Finally, no Somali wanted to take her in because if they took her in, then the FRRO would come there and they said our families would be in danger. So it's okay, can you move out from here? So she, tired of moving from one place to the other and thrown out of somebody's house, she finally went and sought refuge in a mosque. And during the pandemic, it so happened that her friend, who had a big family, again, Somali women have a lot of children because they believe that they're not supposed to abort. And so that is one thing. And they marry and then they just focus on children. So she also had a large family and she accommodated H into her house. And for the first time in H's life, she had 3 meals a day and was so happy during COVID. So I saw one positive side. Yeah, but they all had COVID eventually. They all got COVID eventually. So you can, yeah, maybe we should ask Valan sir for his perspective.
Can you just say the question again? Sorry, I could not.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just asking about how does the COVID-19 affect mobility and migration?
Okay, sure. So, of course, COVID has been a very challenging time because most of these refugees who are in India have only one option of like self-reliant, that is to engage in informal economy. So, as laborers or as workers on a daily wage. So, basically, this COVID has really shaken them in terms of like their ability to maintain self-reliancy in terms of earning a job, income, and continue to live, meet their sustenance. So that has been one of the major challenge that we have seen across locations, across different groups of refugees. And of course, thanks to the support of some of the government initiatives, especially when it comes to Tamil Nadu, the government of Tamil Nadu had given all the special packages which they had extended to all the vulnerable population, to the refugees also. And but with regard to those who are living in urban areas such as Hyderabad and the other locations in Delhi and elsewhere, we had to step in and to provide for almost a year a monthly ration kit for the refugees to sustain. So that is a kind of a level of challenges that had to be encountered by the refugees during the COVID. But thankfully, the death of due to COVID, people who are succumbed to COVID was not so high, because one reason is that the healthcare services was very much readily available, and we also through our partners we had stepped up some of the support systems, especially in terms of supporting on their health services. And second thing is also with regard to the COVID, the shots, the vaccination, the government could quickly come out with the specific SOP for those who are not having Aadhaar cards, those who are not having any documentation, also to be included through a special SOP developed by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So that has really helped, and most of the refugees were also get benefited out of this vaccination. So that is the COVID situation and their impact.
Thank
Yeah.
thank you.
The,
I think perhaps we could. I think we are running a little late right now, so I would ask the organizers to explain to us.
Debashree ma'am, can I just
Yes,
add something?
yes.
Yeah, the number of students who came from Africa to study here also came down drastically, and some of the students who were already studying left. So I remember another respondent of mine who was really desperate because she was sharing space with students, and they had to leave because otherwise their visas would, expire, and then it would become problematic. And the number of patients who came had also, you know, the flights were banned, so they couldn't come because otherwise they came in huge numbers. So that was another way of livelihood for some of the male refugees whom I knew. So that was another setback. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I would like to ask the organizers because it's been a very interesting panel, and I'm sure speakers will be available for questions. They have to come going via email across today. I would pass it on to inform them and ask them if they would like to speak or if they would like to do.
Yes, I think we have come to almost 7:45, so we can conclude this meeting. And if students have questions and they want to connect with Dr. Geetha, Mr. Valan, or Dr. Bernard Disami, we can certainly facilitate that.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chulu. Thank you to all our speakers and to all listeners who've been with us during the session. I now pass it on to the organizers. Are the organizers there?
Yes, Gayatri.
We had an interesting discussion. I thank the chairperson and others for their valuable contribution. Now I request Mrs. P. Sumati, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to give vote of thanks.
Good evening, one and all present here. Thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say, says Alice Walker. I feel very proud to share a few words about the emancipation of the intensive growth of In Tandem Club at this pleasant evening. In Tandem is a think tank, paving way for enlightenment and extending its godship to the students. Uh, every fortnight, the knowledge blooms to a fruition in this virtual meet. At this juncture, I feel very happy to share our courtesy and gratitude to our revered principal, who constantly, with the ideal support, grooming for its reverberations. Thank you, madam. I'd like to convey my hearty thanks to the knight in shining armor, who is none other than Dr. Rufus, sir, Associate Professor of English, Madras Christian College, Chennai. Sir, sir, you are known for inspiring us with your expertise and with the help of your vlogs. Thank you very much, sir, and hats off to your support. Dr. Srilata Sugantham, retired professor, Department of English, Chelamman College, Chennai, is the most vibrant personality known for engaging and illuminating their insight upon every perspective. We used to enjoy the unfathomable mastery in every discussion, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Next, we are very lucky to have Dr. Debashree, Associate Professor and Deputy Coordinator, Center for Canadian Studies, Jadavpur University of Kolkata. Madam's proficiency in eco-criticism is highly enriching. The way you took over the session of prison narratives and this brief note on refugees studies are very interesting, ma'am. Thank you so much for your active participation with this in tandem and let us call us. I extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Aparna Srinivasan, Director, Emerald Dove Learning. The enormous learning skill and the potentiality of its expression on the literature of historical geography impart us all an immense scope to probe more into it. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Padma, Associate Professor of English, Salamaris College, Chennai, is part of In Tandem. In this process of sharing and transferring the knowledge with us is really empowering. Thank you so much, ma'am. It is an immense pleasure to thank today's dignitaries, Professor Bernard D. Soming, Director, Loyola Institute of Social Science, Training, Research, LISSTAR, Loyola College, Chennai. I hope the valuable address would provoke for showing our mind and heart to the whole human integrity. Thank you, sir. Today is really a momentous day as the extensive lecture on refugees has turned out to be highly remarkable as it is giving an insight to the intricacies of refugees' lifestyle. And also it moves us all to their blues of refugees. We convey our sincere thanks to Mr. Michael Valan, head of the field office, UNHCR in India, for the valuable lecture on the plight of refugees. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
My due thanks to Dr. Geetha, Associate Professor of English and Control of Examinations, DG Vaishnav College, Chennai, for sparing her precious time amidst the busy schedule to take part that is in the refugees subject, and which is making the session more that is you are making us all to be more attentive, and making it more valuable, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And, yes, ma'am. And also, hats off to your service to uplift and giving voice for the refugees' life. Thank you, ma'am, once again. I'm very proud that I got an opportunity to thank our department as the faculty members are productively contributing their experiential learning for shaping the students community to face all types of challenges in their lives. My deep thanks to them all. Above all, I'd like to dedicate my sincere thanks to our esteemed and lovable head of the Department of English, Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan. She is the captain of In Tandem, and in whose tremendous effort, and this is reaching out to the height of 21 sessions, really amazing and really a successful venture. Thank you, Preeti ma'am. It is very a bounden duty to extend my sincere and hearty thanks to the research scholars, Mrs. Nancy, the president, and Mrs. Narmada, the secretary of In Tandem, for their persistent effort in chiseling out the symposium every 15 days. And that is, we bow our head for the total commitment and enthusiasm of Nancy and Narmada, and they are the strong pillars. Thank you once again now for you. Last but not the least, I thank all the research scholars, uh, first and second PG students, without whom the success of the meet will lose its magnitude. And so, once for all, to go with a good finish, I quote from Shakespeare, I can no other answer make, but thanks and ever thanks. Unquote. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your hearty note. Now we conclude this session with national anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत
भाग्य विधाता जय हे
जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Valan
Thank you
sir.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mr. Valavan and Geetha.
Thank
Could
you,
not
ma'am.
talk to yes, Geetha. I love to hear. I've been hearing firsthand. I've been hearing your experiences firsthand. You know, it makes it even more heartrending to hear about the refugees. We've heard Geetha after now that she has worked on in the area. She gives us even I mean a very gory picture it is that we have, and we do not know what we can do about this. Thank you, Mr. Valavan, for being there to at least we know now there's a point of contact. Yes,
Thank you,
refugees
ma'am.
are right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Debashree.
Maria.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Debashree.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
good day.
Please let us know what we can do to help with UNHCR initiative.
Yes.
Sure, we'll get in touch, madam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.